Today, in comparisons to the 19th century, we're looking at everyone's favorite topic, the concentration of wealth at the top. Let's start off by comparing the 1%. In 1913, the 1% held 9% of the country's wealth. Today, they hold 10% of the country's wealth. Compare that to the 1970s, where they held just 2% of the country's wealth. So the Gilded Age is really the wild, wild west of capitalism. It's just running amok. There are no guardrails against monopolies. There's no income tax. You see unfair labor practices and the exploitation of workers, money just used in politics for the interests of industry. During the Gilded Age, the immigrant population, 1 in every 7 Americans was an immigrant, because the population doubles between 1870 and 1900. So there was a very cheap labor force that businesses were all too ready to take advantage of. At the same time in the South, white people were still furious over the end of the Civil War. So they started to enact pre-Jim Crow laws called the Black Codes that kept freed African Americans at a disadvantage for generations. Things start to improve when Teddy Roosevelt comes into office as president. It's called the Progressive Era. He decides to go after some of the businesses that had consolidated during the Gilded Age and had formed these monopolies, which is why he's called the Trust Buster, because he enforced the Sherman Antitrust Act, which nobody really had before. And also in the Progressive Era, we see unions start to be formed because workers realize that they have more power when they join together against their employer, and they leverage this through strikes and through bargaining agreements to get better working hours, better pay. Unions become very important into the 1900s, really until like the 1980s. And hey, the first federal income tax is passed in 1913. So all of this goes a long way to help reduce the income disparity. And then guess what? The stock market crashes in 1929 and things are evened out between the rich and the lower classes even more. So how did we get to where we are today? Well, in the 1950s, the tax rate was 93% for the wealthiest Americans. So you didn't really have a big incentive to boost your income as a CEO to get